When I was a kid, I was a crazy bookworm, and I managed to continue this by taking literature A-level and then a literature degree, which basically meant that I had an excuse to just read several books a week. But after I finished my degree, this actually kind of fell apart. And even though I have continued to say that I'm someone who loves to read and loves books, the number of books that I was reading in a year absolutely plummeted. Like, I think in 2023, it was probably only about 5 books. In 2024, I read 10 books, which isn't too bad. But, well, I don't know if anyone else gets this, but sometimes I just get struck by this moment of anxiety of realizing how many books there are in the world and how I'm never going to be able to read all of them, but I want to be able to read as many as I possibly can. And if I'm only reading 10 books a year, I'm not even going to begin to scratch the surface of the number of books that I want to read. So this time last year, in December 2024, I decided to get serious about this and actually implement a strategy to make sure that I was reading as much as I want to. And I'm very pleased to say that a year later, it worked. By the end of 2025, I will have read 23 books. Now, I know that that is pretty measly compared to a lot of booktubers out there who are reading 50 or 100 books in a year. 23 books in 2025 compared to 10 books in 2024 is a 230% increase. Like, I have more than doubled the number of books that I'm reading. So I'm pretty proud of that. And I also think, I just want to be here as like a little bit of realistic representation here with goals. And if you, like me, as someone who had tumbled down into like the single digits of the number of books that you were reading in a year, then let's be realistic. We're probably not going to be able to get up to 50 in the next year, but 23, 25, maybe. So I thought I could run through the 4 changes that I made to my reading habits and how I approach reading, which I think were really, really key to getting me to read much more this year. And then at the end, I'm going to go through my plans for 2026, and it's actually something that you can join in with if you want to. I'm hoping it can be something that maybe could kickstart your reading if you're looking for some inspiration for how to get back into reading, or maybe you're already reading a lot and you just want to get some more books about the environment and the climate crisis. I've got you. I will be talking about that later in this video. Now, the first of the 4 changes that I made was that I signed up to Storygraph. This isn't sponsored, though honestly, I wish it was. If anyone at Storygraph is watching this. No, I just love their service. I think it's great what they're doing, so I'm very happy to shout about it. Storygraph is like Goodreads, but it's not owned by Amazon. Yay! It is an app and a website for tracking books that you want to read and also tracking the books that you have read. And there are all sorts of amazing features, like there's community reviews, there's read-alongs where you can read with other people. Now, despite being an avid book lover, I resisted getting something like Storygraph for years because I really felt like I didn't want to gamify my reading. Whenever I saw people talking about Goodreads or Storygraph, they had these goals of 50 or 100 books in a year, and they would end up reading stuff purely for the sake of hitting their reading goal. And I was like, that's not why I want to be reading a book. I want to be reading a book because I want to read it. I don't want to be reading it just to hit some imaginary number I've given myself. But the reason I decided to try out Storygraph is that I realised I needed a way of tracking the books that I want to read. Like, my main way of tracking all the books that I wanted to read was writing them all in the back of my diary, which was just a bit chaotic. So I thought, let's try getting an app where it makes it really easy to put in all the books that you want to read, and it keeps track of it for you, and you can find all the different editions and all of that kind of thing. And so that's why I got it. And then I thought, well, if I'm here, I might as well track what I'm reading to see like what my progress is like, and I might as well try setting a goal, see if it works for me. And it did. It did. I think if nothing else, it kind of serves as a frequent reminder that you want to read. Like, you go on your phone and there's the app and it's going, hey, here, look at all of these books that you've got on your to-read list, and look at all of these books that we recommend to you, and look at all of these books that your friends are reading. And you're like, yeah, this is something I care about. I'm going to put down my phone and put down Instagram and pick up a book instead because I want to read, remember? And it is still a little bit gamified. But what I hadn't realised before, I set the rules of the game. I realised that I don't care much about my reading streak, but I do quite enjoy trying to hit a particular page goal or a book goal. However you want to do it is how you can do it. You don't have to do it like all of the booktubers. Maybe you don't care about how many books you read in a year, you just want to make sure that you're reading a little bit every day, in which case you can use it to track your streak. It makes it super easy, and I think that accessibility, like I'm much more of I like a good notebook, I like pen and paper, but in this particular case, the digitalization is actually a big advantage. The second change that I made to my reading habits was to actively carve out time for reading. I think because I read so much as a child and because I then read for my literature degree, I just had this idea that sort of reading will happen when it happens. But no, as an adult, reading is much like any other hobby. You actually have to decide when you're going to do it. Like, it used to be that I only really read traveling, and you can see that that's still the case when you look at my Storygraph, because between January and June of 2025, I was commuting to Stockholm every day, and so I read so much, and then the moment I stopped commuting, it plummets. So, like, this is still a work in progress for me in terms of making sure that I do carve out time for reading, but it's certainly, I've definitely made some steps in the right direction. So what I do is I read over breakfast, at the end of my workday as a way to wind down, and then before bed. I'm just about starting to form the habit of like, no, this is the time that I now read, instead of doing the easier thing, which, let's face it, the easier things tends to be picking up your phone and scrolling, which we're trying to avoid. And something else that's really helped with the carving out of the time is the third change I made, which is to read multiple books simultaneously. Fact of the matter is, you're not always in the mood for reading a information heavy non-fiction book or a depressing dystopia. So it is a very good idea to have multiple books on the go so that you can read what you're in the mood for. I actually learned this lesson many years ago when I tried to read The Milkman. Don't get me wrong, it was a good book. It was, from a literary perspective, very, very interesting, but it was also quite intense and quite heavy and quite difficult to follow. And when I tell you, that book took me 9 months to read. Whenever I was like, oh, I'm in the mood for reading, and then I'd think about the fact I was currently reading The Milkman, I was like, oh, I'm not quite in the mood for The Milkman though. And I don't know why I was such an idiot about it, but I was just like, I got completely stuck. I was like, I'm not allowed to read anything else until I finish The Milkman, or I'll never finish The Milkman. When I finally finished the book, I got another book by Becky Chambers and I read it in 2 days. And that was when I realised, the problem wasn't me and that I've forgotten how to read. The problem was the book. So what I do now is I have multiple books on the go so that I can choose whichever one I'm in the mood for. And I also tend to connect specific books to specific time periods that I've set out for reading. Finding a book that suits the time of day and having multiple books to choose from has been massive in getting me to read way more books. But it is the fourth change that I made to how I approached reading that really was the game changer. I think that this is the primary reason that I got so much better at reading more this year. And that is, I created a curriculum. I created for myself a year-long plan of all of the themes that I wanted to read about. And then I put a theme per month. And so I had the entire year planned out of all of the things I was going to get to learn about. Now, just a little disclaimer, I realise that for some people, something like this sounds like their idea of hell. Like the idea of having everything set out like that and feeling like they don't have any choice about what they're reading next. I know that this is not going to work for everyone. All I can say is that this worked brilliantly for me and my brain and how I like to approach things. So I want to share it as a tip. So the way I created the curriculum was I went through that massive list of books as well as all of my podcasts that I'd saved and all of the videos, and I sort of tried to pick out some themes that jumped out at me. And I realized, for example, there's a lot about how animals exist in modernity, or there's a lot about rewilding as a form of rebellion. Now, I didn't get through the entire year. That's totally fine by me. There wasn't any pressure to necessarily complete this curriculum like it was some kind of course. It was more about giving myself that guide. And that is what worked so well. Instead of being sort of overwhelmed by, oh my God, what book should I read next? I had already decided for myself. But at the same time, I did still have some choice, because what I did was I put way more books than I necessarily wanted to read in each section. And it served as a menu rather than as a checklist. So I could still have a choice and I could still feel like I was deciding what I was reading next. It also worked as a fantastic source of just motivation because I went through all of these books that I was really excited to read and going through those lists and then writing them all out. I was like, oh yeah, I really want to read this section and I want to read through all of these books so I can get to the next section and read all of those books that I'm really excited about. And something else that I really enjoyed about doing the curriculum was I decided to put like an other section where it was more kind of like activities. So I was really focusing on how each of these topics, it wasn't just about the books I was reading, it was really about like a short period of my life, a month of my life, where I would be dedicating myself to deep diving into a topic that I find interesting. So, it was reading the books, it was also listening to the podcasts and watching the videos, and then an activity, meditating a lot, or going out on a walk in the forest and taking lots of photographs and being really attentive. And the fact that it sort of each topic became sort of my life for a short period of time meant that I was really motivated, felt like it was part of this wider purpose. And so I am very pleased to say that I have done it again. I have made another curriculum for 2026, and this time you can come along with me if you want. Just like last year's, it is all about the climate crisis and environmental issues, and it covers books and podcasts and also activities that you could potentially do to sort of make that learning really active and in your body. It's more the sort of philosophical, emotional side of the climate crisis, reimagining how we can exist in this world and with nature, facing the harsh reality of the crisis that we're facing, but always looking for empowerment and hope. And of course, there's lots of diversity in the authors that I've picked out, lots of voices that are Indigenous, POC, disabled, queer, and female. I'm going to be starting this curriculum on the 21st of December, which hopefully is the day that this video is coming out, because that is the day of the winter solstice. So the shortest day of the year or the longest night of the year, and then the sun begins to return. Last year, my curriculum was a little bit chaotic. I just sort of picked themes and put them at random times. This time, I have outdone myself, if I don't say so myself. I have matched the different themes of the books to the turning of the year, and I have aligned it all with the zodiac and the Celtic Sabbats and the seasons. So to give you a little taste of what this curriculum includes, we start off with winter, which has the theme of prepare. So these three topics are looking to give you the foundational knowledge of the climate crisis and the foundational ideas for reimagining how we live in the world. The overall goal of spring is germinate. So here we're moving into action and looking to understand how we can apply the knowledge that we learned during the winter. In the summer, we are going to be cultivating what we have learned, bringing it even further, looking to make real change and engage with politics and power. Then finally, next autumn is integrate. So this is looking at what ideas are we taking away from this entire year? How can they become a part? How can they integrate with our daily lives? Just like last year, I've tried to have a good mix of non-fiction and fiction because I think we can learn as much through stories as through facts. But I've also tried to add in a lot more poetry. I want to get back into writing poetry myself, so I want to be reading more poetry, but it's still a little bit sparse. So if anyone has any poetry recommendations for some of these topics, I would really appreciate that. Now, to be clear, I've made this curriculum for myself. I have made it out of the themes that I want to look at. I have collected all of the books that I want to read. So it's not meant to be comprehensive about the climate crisis. It's not meant to include every single issue that there is, but I just really love sharing book recommendations and chatting about books, obviously. So that is why I am inviting other people to join me. Now, the easiest way to follow along, if you would like to, is that I've created a challenge on Storygraph. The format of the challenge is that it is done as prompts, so you don't have to read a specific book to have completed the prompt. You just need to read a book that is relevant to the prompt, and I've put loads of suggestions. It includes books from this curriculum, which is primarily made up of the books that I still want to read, but I have also included books that I've already read and can recommend for each topic. But you are also free to add your own books to each prompt. So if you think you have your own book that fits a particular prompt, then you can add that in and you can still complete the challenge with me. And to be clear, I would love that. I would really, really love this to be a growing thing where people are just throwing all of the book recommendations out. And I really want to be clear that you make the rules about this. Like, I've suggested each of these themes and it kind of fits the specific zodiac and Sabbath times and the vibes, the energies of a particular time of year. But like, you can follow that or not. You can do it according to the calendar months if that's how you prefer to organize things, or you can just pick out each theme randomly and not follow it chronologically. You can read all 12 topics or only one. I really don't care. This is really about me wanting to share wonderful authors and ideas about sustainability and the climate crisis and what it means to live during the Anthropocene. But if there is enough interest, which I hope there is, I would love for this to become like maybe a bit of a kind of virtual book club. Maybe we could have a Discord chat where we all chat about the books that we've been reading under each topic, or maybe I could do monthly live streams where I talk about the books I've read. I don't really know. It's hard for me. I'm still very small at this point. I'm not getting very many views and not a lot of interaction, so I don't really know how many people are going to be joining me on this. But if there is anyone, then and people are interested in creating like a little community around this, I would love that. Ultimately, my hope is that this curriculum, maybe it can kickstart you getting back into reading overall, or whether you're already someone who reads a lot, this can get you into reading more about environmental issues. I just hope that we can all share these wonderful ideas about how to live better in the world. Whether you are thinking of joining Ink and Earth or not, I really hope that these tips have been useful for you and that it can help you getting back into reading. If you're interested to see the videos that I make about some of the books in the curriculum, then make sure to subscribe. And I will also link somewhere around here the playlist for Ink and Earth. So that just leaves me to say, happy winter solstice, enjoy the return of the sun, and I wish you all the best for the coming year.